How you doing, everybody? Welcome into the High Noon Rant with me, Pugs Moran, a 2-hour plus stream of consciousness of unfiltered, ungoverned thoughts about today. Everything that's trending, everything that's a headline, if they're screaming about it on the cable news box, I'm going to tell you why they're screaming about it. I'm going to give you my 10 cents on it. I'm going to say, here's my hot take. And then we move on. We don't spend too much time on any one subject. It's pretty much rip and read style, where I like to pretend like it's a give and take because we got the chat rooms here. People are chiming in as we go, but really it's just me, unfiltered. We've been doing this now for 2.5 years. 2.5 years. And again, I don't know who's enabling who. I don't know who the bad guy in this relationship is between me and you fine folks in the chat room. By the way, let's say hi to the chat room. Who do we got? Who's first in? Taranda's here. She's here. Looks like Barney was the first in, though. If we're giving credit, it looks like Barney. He says, I was starting to worry. Cameron's here. Adam's here. Byron's here. Come on, everybody. Grab your little beanbag chairs, your futons, whatever it is. Form your soul circle. Join hands, and let's move forward. A little bit late today. I apologize. Had early morning meetings. Had very early morning meetings today. I had 2 of them. I went boop, bada boop, and then to the next one. And so I was a little bit behind the 8 ball when it came to putting today's show together. But have no fear. I feel we've got a wang dang dilly of a ball game here. We got a good show for you. Well, KB is here. Hello. Hold on. I need a drink. What can I say? I need to slow it down for a second. I should tell people what the show is. The show is performed for you by yours truly in 4 distinct segments. 4 segments that interlock to create the one overall rant. The 4 segments, I roll them out like football quarters. We say 4 quarters. First quarter, first segment of the show, we do called Antecedently on This Day. What's that? That's a pretentious way of saying this day in history. I just cherry pick some cool events that happened on this day and we riff on them. Then birthdays. Self-explanatory. Then comes the deaths. Birthdays are quarter 2. The deaths are quarter 3. The deaths. We look at people who died on this day and we decide if they went to heaven or hell. That's it. That's fun. I like that one. Quarter 4 is hot topics, current events, all the stuff that's trending, the important stuff. And that's it. That's the show. Then we say bye and we go away. What else do I have? That's right. This show, there you go. I got to mention this. We don't have an executive producer at today's show. We haven't had an executive producer in a couple of shows this week, but that's okay because next week is when I'm going to do the big push. But if you want to support this show in any way, shape, or form, drop a little something in the Venmo or the Cash App. That is how we have stayed in business these last couple of years. That is how we are able to do this kind of talk radio, nonpartisan, non-political, non-divisive. Stupid for sure. This show is stupid, but it's not any of them other things. All right, thank you so much. Sup, Adam? Adam's like, sup. I've had a lot of coffee today. I mean, I know you're thinking, you're like, well, how can you tell? Because you're always like 8-ball Johnny. I'm always like a little bit ramped up. I love what I do. It's exciting. This is exciting. What can I tell you? But today, a little bit extra with the coffee. Guess what I did too, by the way? So I like to drink my Coke Zero and I love my coffee. Those are 2 things that carry a whole lot of caffeine. I am way outside my limits as far as caffeine goes. So I went to the store and instead of buying the generic Kroger version of Coke Zero, I bought the generic Kroger version of Coke Zero, caffeine free. Yeah, I'm cutting my caffeine. I'm cutting my caffeine way down. And then today comes along where I have to wake up extra early. And guess who's drinking twice as much coffee as he would on a normal day? That's me. I'm going to switch to decaf. Let me ask you guys something. I've never tried this before. I've never tried decaf. I might switch over to decaf. I may try and eliminate my caffeine intake entirely. Does decaf taste any different? Because here's the thing. Caffeine-free cola doesn't taste any different. The caffeine has nothing to do with the flavor of the cola. The absence of caffeine in caffeine-free Coke Zero has absolutely no bearing on the taste. So I'm wondering, is it the same thing for coffee? Because I really just like the awful coffee taste. The black, bitter, hot. It's just like, another day. That's what coffee is supposed to taste like, and that's what it tastes like. But is caffeine-free coffee, is that going to be, am I going to taste it? I'm going to be like, this tastes different. I don't know. All coffee tastes bad. It's like whiskey. Oh, Pugs, whiskey's no, dude. All alcohol is spoiled fruit. Stop it. You've programmed yourself into pretending like it's something that's good. That's Buffalo. That's Emil. Emil calling me in the middle of the show. I don't know why he's doing that. If it's important, he will text. Otherwise, I will have to hit him back later. What was I saying now? Yeah, I don't know the difference between neither do you people. No one in the chat room has chimed in to help me. No one in the chat room has said, yes, caffeine-free coffee or decaffeinated coffee tastes different. I don't know how it could. Coffee tastes terrible. Whiskey tastes terrible. Booze tastes terrible. Booze is spoiled fruit. We've just programmed ourselves into going, as far as spoiled fruit goes, this is pretty good. We're chasing the buzz. That's all. Barney says, I've been trying to avoid caffeine after 5 p.m. I'm sleeping better. Yeah, that might. I mean, I sleep pretty good. Sleep has never been a problem. I've taken copious amounts of caffeine, and sleep has never really been a problem for me. Of course, maybe that's because sleep has always been a problem for me, which is why I take melatonin every night. So yeah, I'm like realizing that, wait a second, I have to take a sleep aid every night. So maybe cutting out the caffeine will eliminate that. Barty says, I see no point in decaffeinated coffee. Well, I mean, I do. It's the ritual of it. I mean, if I were to wake up every morning and not have something hot that tastes awful, I would feel out of sorts. And if there's a way to avoid that feeling of out of sorts by simply not having caffeinated coffee, I don't know. I see a point to it. I get it. It's the ritual of drinking coffee. Here's another thing about me and coffee. I didn't start drinking coffee till my late 30s. I made it all the way into my late 30s before I started drinking coffee. And I don't know. I think I started meeting people at Starbucks. I think that's how it started. I'd never had coffee the entire time that we were doing, the live 105.3 shows. Kelly'd have her coffee and everybody have their coffee in the morning. I had sugar-free Red Bulls. I used to do 2 sugar-free Red Bulls a show. Now, I guess that's pretty heavy caffeine there, but whatever. All right, that's enough of this. We don't need to be talking about such nonsense. Let's move on. Let's do the rant, huh? What do you say? I'm just trying. I try to spend a couple of minutes here at the beginning of the show just getting my stream of consciousness flow going, just trying to get up. Because, for 2 hours here, I'm going to blab, blah, 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 blah. And then for the next 22 hours, I'm not going to say anything to anybody. I'm not going to talk to anybody. Probably going to talk to the dog. Maybe I'll have a couple phone conversations, but really this is going to be it. So let's get it out of the system. Although that's not true because it's kids' weekend. I got the boy this weekend, so I'll be talking to him in a couple hours. He and I talk because he's interesting. He's interesting. All right, let's get started. It's the High Noon Rant with me, Pugs Moran. It is the 23rd day of, I almost said January. No, February. Remember, we pledged to pronounce it properly. February 23rd is the 54th day of the year. And fun fact, there's 312 more of these till the end of the year. Because it's a leap year, if you're doing the math. Wait, Pugs, 365 days. That math doesn't, it's a leap year. That's all. All right, segment 1, quarter 1, as we call it here. Hi, Frank. Frank's just showing up going, Pugs. So I'm just going to respond in kind. Frank. Let's get started. Quarter 1, antecedently on this day. These are the events that occurred throughout history on this day. I've cherry-picked the ones that I find semi-interesting. On this day, antecedently in 1836, Texas Revolution, the Siege of the Alamo. That's right. Now, this is the prelude to the Battle of the Alamo. We all know how that played out. This is the siege. Pronounce that properly. Siege. This is the siege of the Alamo, where, they sieged it. You ever been to the Alamo? I've been to the Alamo. What a disappointment. Seriously, what a disappointment. I'm like, what? It's nearly as disappointing as Graceland, if you've ever been to Graceland. A place I'm proud to say I'm banned for life from. But yeah, the Alamo is kind of like that. Like, you go to the Alamo and you're like, oh, this is going to be, and then you're like, huh? This does not at all seem mythological, Americana, the way I thought. Antecedently on this day in 1861, President-elect Abraham Lincoln arrived secretly in Washington, D.C. Why? Why the big secret? Because someone tried to kill him. Did you know this? Did you know somebody tried to kill Abraham Lincoln before somebody killed Abraham Lincoln? Yeah, it says here he arrives in secrecy after thwarting an alleged assassination plot in Baltimore, Maryland. Antecedently on this day in 1898, Émile Zola is imprisoned in France and writing. Okay, so this is the guy who wrote Jacques, which is the French book, classic French literature. Jacques, actually, this is not classic French literature. It's just history. Jacques, written by Émile Zola. This is the story. We always mention this one whenever it comes up in history because I'm fascinated that one of my favorite people in the world, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, is related to Alfred Dreyfus, who is the center of the Dreyfus affair, who was the subject of the book, Jacques Hughes. It's just interesting to me that Julia Louis-Dreyfus has like this historical thing. Anyway, moving on. Antecedently on this day in 1903, Cuba leases Guantanamo Bay to the United States in perpetuity. Okay, so that makes sense. Like, because, during the whole Guantanamo Gitmo, remember that was a word we all used? Gitmo. During the age of that, I used to always be like, wait a second. It's Cuba. We don't like Cuba. Cuba don't like us. How do we got this big chunk of land there? And how are they? I mean, why haven't they kicked us out or tried to kick us out of there? You would think that would be a big bone of contention, and I suppose it was. I'm just not up on my American-Cuban history. Guantanamo Bay in perpetuity. So we still got it. What is that? I know it's like a military. We got military base there. Because what else are we going to do? Put up a mall? It's Cuba. Nobody got no money. So we put a military base there, and I guess it's the prison, right? We turned it into like a terror prison. But is it like really kick-ass beaches and stuff like that? Like, is it something that once we normalize relations with Cuba, we're just going to flip that spot into like a Hilton or a Four Seasons? There can be a Carlos and Charlie's right in the place where we tortured Muslim terrorists. Is that what? That's what's coming. I'm pretty sure. All right, moving on. Antecedently on this day in 1942, that was 1903, we leased Guantanamo. Got to imagine in 1903, Cuba didn't really have much bargaining power. They were just sort of like, an island. But we did 1903. We didn't have much bargaining power either. We were just the United States. I don't know, whatever. We hadn't won any world wars yet. It's not like people were going, look out for the United States. They're pretty cool. Now, we were probably seen like, I don't know, like a country like, I was going to say Canada, but that's almost too close. Anyway, moving on. Antecedently on this day in 1942, World War II, Japanese submarines fire artillery shells at the coastline near Santa Barbara, California. This is one of them stories I always tell you. There's a number of these incidents. One happened in Washington. I had no idea that during World War II, the Japanese actually bombed America. They actually attacked us multiple times. There was a situation up in the Pacific Northwest. Almost started a land war. And then there was, maybe that was the movie The Russians Are Coming. I don't know. I think that, anyway, this incident that happened in Santa Barbara influenced the John Landis film, 1941. They did. They fired bombs from a submarine. Antecedently on this day in 1958, five-time Argentinian Formula One champion Juan Manuel Fangio is kidnapped by rebels involved in the Cuban Revolution. This was on the eve of the Cuban Grand Prix. He was released the following day after the race. How weird is that? By the way, Netflix, back today, the new season of Drive to Survive. I love me some Drive to Survive. That's the Formula One reality series. I'm going to binge that all weekend. Make my son watch it. He's going to be like, yeah, I've got 5 episodes to go, kiddo. I love that show. So the Cuban Grand Prix is a thing that used to happen before they went all communist. But the Cuban Grand Prix, I guess, was a race. It was on the Formula One schedule. Juan Manuel Fangio is one of the most famous race car drivers in history. Juan Manuel Fangio shows up in Cuba. And the night before the race, he's kidnapped by revolutionaries who let him go. They just let him go. And like that stupid plot to that Daniel Stern, Dan Aykroyd movie. Wasn't it like a stupid, didn't like Damon Wayans, wasn't he playing like a Boston Celtic? And then I think like Dan Aykroyd, maybe it wasn't Daniel Stern, but I think like Dan Aykroyd kidnapped him or something and then let him go? You didn't even cut a finger off? Come on. Anyway, moving on. On this day in 1974, the Symbionese Liberation Army demands $4 million more to release Patty Hearst. Yeah, this was the fly-by-night group of faux terrorists, just a bunch of disenfranchised suburban white kids who fell under the spell of Sin Q. Or was it Sin K? I don't know. I'm not exactly sure how it was pronounced. I think it's Sin Q. Sin Q was this, well, he was like too extreme for the Black Panthers. He was this, and he got almost like Manson. Like he got a whole bunch of like, hot young chicks around him and all that kind of stuff, and suburban, princesses, who were mad at daddy. So they all joined little Sin Q, Symbionese Liberation Army, and they kidnapped Patty Hearst. That's what they were famous for. And then did she or didn't she become a member of the Symbionese Liberation Army? I think she did. I think she did. I used to be really into the Patty Hearst story. I read a number of books about it. I saw all the movies. Because that's the question. She was kidnapped. She's the daughter of a Hearst, right? William Randolph Hearst. Before there was a Rupert Murdoch, there was a William Randolph Hearst. She's his daughter. She's going to college there. I want to say she was going to Berkeley, and she was kidnapped from her apartment one night, held for ransom. The rich daughter of this industrial, icon, titan. And they kept her for a long time, and everybody in the country was like, Patty Hearst, Patty Hearst. It was like a big story, and they kept her for a long time. And then she started participating in bank robberies. And then there was like one where she's firing her gun in the bank and she's smiling. Dude, she totally, now I don't know if it's Stockholm Syndrome. That could be a real thing. But she totally bought into that group. And then when everything fell apart, when the group, started to implode because they were crazy people, when the group started to implode, that's when she decided to go, I'm going to escape, and I'm no longer, and they put her on trial. That was a real controversial thing about Patty Hearst. After she was finally released or whatever, she was put on trial for robbing a bank, and she went to jail because she was into it. That was on this day in 1974. The Symbionese Liberation Army demands $4 million more from Patty Hearst's father. On this day in 2020, Ahmaud Arbery, 25-year-old African-American citizen, is shot and murdered by 3 white men after yeah. Well, I guess because it is a racial story, you would want history to reflect that it was a racial story. But, I mean, we know why they killed him. We know this story. These guys all rightfully went to jail. Bunch of dummies with guns going, kill that guy, you don't belong here. Just an ugly, ugly story. All right, that's going to do it. That's antecedently on this day, ladies and gentlemen. Quarter 1 is in the books. Now it's time for Bonum. They say it's their birthday. I don't know. I haven't double checked. Born on this day in 1940, Peter Fonda, the Easy Rider himself. I met Peter Fonda once. He was cool. And one of the great things in my life, I received an organic. This happened organically. I didn't force them or say, can you say this? It happened organically. During an interview with Peter Fonda, I said something. And Peter Fonda, Easy Rider himself, Peter Fonda replied, far out, man. Yeah, I got a far out, man, from like the chief hippie in charge. Peter Fonda, far out, man. That was so cool. I mean, I didn't even draw attention to it when it happened, but in my head I went, I got a far out, man, from Peter Fonda. I got a high with Chong, Tommy Chong. That's one. Another good one. I don't know. Moving on. Peter Fonda, happy birthday. Born on this day in 1940. Born on this day, he's dead now, though. Born on this day in 1951, Ed Too Tall Jones, Dallas Cowboy legend. Let's hear it for him. Big old Ed Too Tall Jones. He was too tall. He, see, in the Hall of Fame, like, were these guys that became like icons of football in the 1970s because of the America's Team brand, were they actually good? Like I know the teams were good. I know that collectively as a team were good. But like individually, like Hollywood Henderson, is he in the Hall of Fame? Ed Too Tall, he in the Hall of Fame? I know Randy White is. You understand that. I don't know, but he was a thing. Ed Too Tall Jones. I knew him when I was like 8 years old. Moving on. Happy birthday, born on this day in 1952, Brad Whitford, American guitarist and songwriter. Of course, Brad Whitford in the American iconic band Aerosmith. Brad Whitford, not to be confused with Bradley Whitford, who was an American actor. Bradley Whitford has to go by Bradley Whitford. Bradley Whitford from Josh Lyman from The West Wing, and he's done a bunch of other things. Cabin in the Woods, guy, so good in that. Bradley Whitford, the actor, had to change his name from, he wanted to be Brad Whitford. That's the name that he wanted to go with. That's what everybody calls him, Brad. But he had to change it to Bradley Whitford because apparently at some point, Brad Whitford of Aerosmith had to join the Actors Union. I don't know if it was because of some, I don't know. Didn't Aerosmith appear in Sgt. Pepper's in the 70s? That's probably when he had to like join the Actors Union. So anyway, Brad Whitford of Aerosmith is the first in to get the name Brad Whitford. So when Bradley Whitford, the actor, when he started acting, he was like, what do you mean I can't be called Brad Whitford? And they're like, there's already somebody registered here in the union with that name. You got to do a different name. That's why we have a Michael B. Jordan. You know, you thank Space Jam for that. Because Michael Jordan had to become an actor. He had to get into the Actors Union. And now that name can never be used. Moving on. Fun story about how Aerosmith ruined my 21st birthday. Aerosmith ruined my 21st birthday. It was a concert we were going to go to. We were going to get shit-faced. It was my 21st birthday. Let's get shit-faced! And, of course, we choose Aerosmith, and it was on there. We're sober now tour. So just because Aerosmith couldn't drink anymore, they made their audience go dry for an entire Aerosmith concert. Now, it was a fun concert, but you should be drunk at an Aerosmith concert. Moving on, born on this day in 1955, Howard Jones. Whoa, 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 oh, 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 oh. That's it. That's all I got on Howard Jones. Born on this day in 1965, Kristen Davis. Oh, Kristen Davis. I don't know nothing about No Sex in the City. I don't watch that show, but I know Kristen Davis. She is an all-timer. Oh, my God. Like 2004, 2005, Kristen Davis. Oh, my God. If I had done that bit where you go to a police sketch artist and you describe your perfect woman just to see what she'd look like after a police sketch artist, back in that day, I would have described Kristen Davis. She's, God, how's she holding up? Probably pretty good. Someone who starts out that she's going to be a gorgeous 80-year-old. Born on this, how old is she now? Kristen Davis, 65, so she's 59. I think. I don't know, quick math. Born on this day also in 1965, Michael Dell. This show is brought to you by Michael Dell. It's Dell computers that we use around here. Let me see here. Let's see here. And now human mayo container Chris Hardwick is married to her daughter. Whose daughter? Kristen Davis? I guess so. That's like the most recent woman I've mentioned. All right. Yeah, I'm a little behind when I check in on the chat. Kristen Davis, she's got a daughter, and she's married to Chris Hardwick, so I'm guessing she's very attractive because I can't imagine Chris Hardwick being with a girl that I wouldn't find very attractive. Moving on. Isn't that fun, though? You ever do that? You ever see like a celebrity spouse and look at their spouse and be like, I feel like I could do better? You know, that's a very rare thing with celebrities to like, be able to look at a celebrity wife and go, huh? He could do better. I could think I could do better. Born on this day in 1976, Kelly McDonald. Can't do better than her. Love her. Oh, Patty Hearst. Chris Hardwick's married to Patty Hearst's daughter. Jesus, man. That guy is just rolling in dough. He made a whole bunch of money very early in the whole podcast thing. Like he was one of the first crazy people that got like 50 million for their podcast. And then I don't know what happened to it. But now he's married to a Hearst. He's got Hearst money. Folks, I told you about Kristen Davis. I love Kristen Davis. But I also love Kelly McDonald. It's Kelly McDonald's birthday. She was born in 1976. About 10 years younger than Kristen Davis. Kelly McDonald, I first noticed Kelly McDonald, and I was smitten. And let me tell you something. It takes a lot to smitten me when your character is playing a heroin junkie. And that's who Kelly McDonald was. Train Spotting. That's the first time Kelly McDonald popped on my... Then, Boardwalk Empire. I don't know if you ever saw Boardwalk Empire. She had like 10 years on Boardwalk Empire. She was one of the stars. She was Nucky's wife, who started out as his Irish maid or something. She was like his Irish maid, but then she turned into... She's awesome. Kelly McDonald. I love her. Born on this day in 1976. Born on this day in 1981, Josh Gad. I like Josh Gad, too. Josh Gad is funny. He always plays the same character. He plays a dick, but he's a funny dick. What's that HBO Max show that he's on with the dude from House? I don't know. I know what's that guy's name? Rupert something. What's the guy's name from House? I don't know. Hugh Laurie. There you go. Look at me. Hugh Laurie from House. Josh Gad and Hugh Laurie are on that Space something 5 show, Space Station 5. It's a comedy. It's a half-hour comedy. It's on HBO Max. It's really funny. Nobody watches it, but it's really funny. Josh Gad is really funny. I like him. Hugh says, Pugs and I could never hang out as we both have the same taste in women. Well, okay. I don't know about that. I can be very fluid with my taste in women. I'm very good. But yeah, Kelly McDonald and Kristen Davis. Woo! All right, moving on. Born on this day in 1981, one of my all-time favorite. I think I had him at number 3 on my all-time favorite Chicago Bear list. A guy who changed football. Didn't really get the credit in the time, but now he's widely regarded as a guy who changed the way that people tackle. He is Charles Tillman. He's heading to the Hall of Fame. Not this year. Didn't get in, but he will get in. Charles Tillman. Great cornerback for the Chicago Bears, of course, famous for Peanut Tillman, as we all know and love him, famous for the peanut punch, which now everybody does. Everybody, every time you see it in the game, they're like, there's that peanut punch. What are we watching, the 05 Bears? I mean, he was great. He had a way of doing it. I think he's got the record for like the most forced fumbles. I mean, he just flat out, I guess when you got Lance Briggs and Brian Urlacher slowing a tackler down, by the time the corner comes to it, the corner didn't really have to worry about tackling. The corner he would just punch that ball, and that ball came out. Peanut Tillman, I love him. Also, really cool, interesting dude, by the way. Peanut Tillman retires from the NFL and goes straight to Quantico, goes straight to the FBI Academy. Charles Tillman is one of the top special agents in charge in the Chicago FBI office. Charles Tillman. He didn't just go to Fox and sit on a dais and wear expensive suits and then go for fancy steak dinners with prostitutes. That's not what he did. He joined the FBI. Charles Tillman. Let's see here. What else do we have? Born on this day in 1981. Born on this day in 1983, Aziz Ansari. Very funny guy. Hope he gets his career back. Born on this day in 1983, just like Aziz Ansari. Emily Blunt. I love Emily Blunt. She's adorable. But here's the thing. I fell for Emily Blunt without ever even knowing what she looked like. I was smitten by I was smitten by Emily Blunt. She's the one married to John Krasinski, right? Jim from The Office. I think that's who she's married. She is. Yeah, she's married to them. They're a cool couple. I should put them on my list. I need to put them on my list since I like Emily Blunt. I fell for her when my son was little, and we used to watch over and over again Romeo and Juliet. I always thought that was a good one for him to watch because I wanted him to have some sort of understanding of Shakespeare, and that's basically Romeo and Juliet. It's a Shakespeare play just done for kids as garden gnomes. Oh, it was so cute. It was so cute. The two everything was just like Romeo and Juliet. It's just done with garden gnomes who live next door to each other, the Capulets and the Montagues. That was the name of the people who lived next door. Like there were Montague garden gnomes and Capulet garden. Oh, it's Shakespeare. Anyway, me and my son, we loved it. And she played Juliet, or is it Juliet? I don't know. But she was the voice of Juliet, Emily Blunt. And oh my God, she was so adorable as little garden gnome Juliet. Happy birthday to you, Emily Blunt. Born on this day in 1983. Born on this day in 1992, Samara Weaving. I don't know who she is. I mean, here's how I know who Samara Weaving is. She's an actress. She hasn't done anything that I've ever seen, I don't think. She hasn't stood out to any degree for me thus far. But she looks exactly like Margot Robbie. She's one of the clones. She's one of the Margot Robbie clones. There are like 4 or 5 different Margot Robbie clones. Chief among them is Jamie Presley. Margot Robbie is just an update of the Jamie Presley clone, which was she got all kinds of new downloads. She's a totally different person, much more talented than Jamie Presley, but the same chassis, if you will, the same clone chassis. Samara Weaving. Look her up. Actually, just do this. Put Samara Weaving, Margot Robbie. You'll see what I'm talking about. She's one of the clones. Born on this day in 1992. Born on this day in 1994, Dakota Fanning. Which one is she? There's a couple Fannings, right? I don't know which one's older. There's a Dakota Fanning and there's a Carolina Fanning. Probably not Carolina Fanning. It's Dakota Fanning, Elle McFanning. No, it's Elle McPherson. I don't know. I'm confused. But a happy birthday nonetheless, Dakota Fanning. All right, that's going to do it. Quarter 2 is in the books. Now it's time for us to do my favorite part of the show. This is where we go into the dead people. That's right, dead people, people who died this day. That, of course, is the sound effect used when we damn someone to eternal hellfires. This is welcoming them to heaven. And that's what we do here. We look at people who died on this day and we decide based on our own, heaven or hell. First, dead on this day in 1848, we got to preemptively put him in hell because he was a president of the United States and he did some shit. John Quincy Adams. He also goes to hell for being a Nepo baby. John Quincy Adams. Really? What are we doing? Right out of the box. Right out of the box in this country, we're recycling names we recognize and giving them all the power in the country. John Quincy Adams, get your ass in hell. Dead on this day in 1965. We're putting him in heaven. Yeah. Stan Laurel of Laurel and Hardy. Stan Laurel, he was the sad one. He was, why is everybody mean to me? I don't even know if he talked. Did they talk? Did Laurel and Hardy talk? Anyway, he's going to heaven. Stan Laurel is going to heaven. Dead on this day in 1965, Stan Laurel. Dead on this day in 2003, Howie Epstein. Howie Epstein, bass player. Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Howie Epstein was cool. Howie Epstein's in hell. He was a troubled drug guy. He was a great, I don't even know if he was a great bass player. I just know that he was in Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, and he was cool, and he was kind of a rock star for a bunch of years. And then he died, and then a whole bunch of stories started coming out about how he was like reckless and all. So, just for that period, we're just going to put him. He had a rough 80s through 90s. Dead on this day in 2019. Here you go. One more. We're putting her in heaven. Katherine Hellman. Katherine Hellman. Mona from Who's the Boss? Jessica Tate? Jessica Tate from Soap? I know she's Soap. That's the first time I ever saw Katherine Hellman was in Soap. But then she became famous. She's Mona. She was Mona. Fun fact about Katherine Hellman, they actually wanted her. She was supposed to be one of the original Golden Girls. Yeah. And she said, I don't want to do another series. That sounds stupid. Nobody's going to watch that. And look, Katherine Hellman, she could have been one of the Golden Girls, but she wasn't. But she's in heaven because she seemed nice. Come on. She was really nice in Soap. She was she was stupid in Soap. She was a rich woman, totally oblivious to the whole world, but really sweet and kind-hearted. Mona was kind of a baller. Mona in Who's the Boss was kind of a baller. All right, that's going to do it. Look at that. We are done now with 3/4. It is time for us to now get back into all the hot topics, current events, and trends. Quarter 4, the bulk of the show. We're going quick today because I got a lot going on, but don't worry. I feel like I'm not going to cheat you on the show. All right, first out of the box. We knew this was coming. I have no idea how deep our sanctions bag is, but apparently there were sanctions left, and we levied them on Putin. What is left to do to him? I thought, didn't we have 10 rounds of sanctions during the first 6 months of the Ukrainian war? Remember, they were seizing oligarchs' boats and penthouses in Paris and stuff like that. They were doing all that, and it was supposedly causing a real problem for Putin because it was putting pressure on the money class, the oligarch class in Russia. It was putting pressure on them to possibly, turn away from Putin and maybe embrace some other form of government, which was bad for Putin. But that's what we in the West were hoping would happen. What ended up happening was oligarchs started falling out of penthouse windows. That's what happened instead. Instead of Putin going, oh, the rich people are angry at me. Instead of that, he just went, well, if they're mad, let's kill them. And they all started having accidents. So apparently there are still some sanctions left that we can levy against Putin. And old President Joe dropped the hammer. Stock market is trending today. The stock market has been trending the last couple of days because apparently the rich people are getting richer and all of us in the middle class, We're paying $5 for a 2-liter bottle of Coke Zero. That's what we're doing in the middle class. But don't worry about our wealthy cousins. The S&P 500 stabilized Friday after hitting another record as investors look to end a week on a high note. The S&P added 0.2% earlier Friday. The broad market index broke above 5,000 for the first time in years. Blah, 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 blah. Rich people getting richer. The stock market is crushing it. The Magnificent Seven, or as I like to call them, the Malevolent Seven, the big 7 tech stocks in this country, in this world country, please, why sell it short? The global monsters of tech are all just crushing it. Everybody's buying yachts. How about that moon landing? The moon landing is trending. Boy, was that anticlimactic. Got to be honest with you. After all the big hype that I said, I can't wait. We're going to do a live stream on the moon landing. I missed it. Totally missed it. Was at the Kroger. So they changed the time. Originally, yesterday, it was CNN was saying tune in at 3 o'clock for coverage of the live moon landing. Then by the time I signed off this show, they had changed the graphic to say 5 o'clock. And I'm like, what's going on here? So this independent company down there in Houston, they want to do moon stuff. They're doing moon stuff. So this independent company, they built some moon stuff and they attached it to one of Elon Musk's SpaceX rockets. And it was supposed to be the first time in 52 years that, anybody, human, whatnot, stepped foot on the moon. It was going to be exciting. And then the thing landed on the moon and it immediately lost transmission. And it was like, what? So the Wi-Fi is screwy. So the Wi-Fi in 1969 was better than the stuff we've got today. Anyway, they're calling it a success. But it wasn't perfect. Here's what they say. We can confirm without a doubt. What we can confirm without a doubt is our equipment is on the surface of the moon. Mission Director Tim Crane reported as tension built in the company's Houston Control Center. Look, here's what we know. It was falling out of the sky, and the only place that it could have crashed into was the moon. So, without a doubt, we know the shit we just sent up into space is on the moon. Any questions? And then they're like, what? Yeah, did it land or did it crash? Again, all we know is that our equipment is on the moon. Let's see. Added Intuitive Machines CEO Steve Altemus. This is the guy, Steve Altemus. He says, I know this was a nail biter, but we are on the surface and we are transmitting. Welcome to the moon. Data was finally starting to stream in, according to a company announcement 2 hours after touchdown. The landing put the U.S. back on the surface for the first time since NASA's famed Apollo moonwalkers. Got into a fight yesterday with Buffalo. That Emil got into a fight with him yesterday. What? This is so stupid. First of all, why are they going to the moon? I go, they need space tourism. Yeah, it's going to be a thing. Just 20 years, we're going to be able to go on a vacation. Who would want to go to? He maintains that nobody has any interest in going on a vacation to the moon, to which I immediately responded to him. Dude, you and your dumbass rich friends will be the first ones to book week-long trips to some ski resort at Mars Tranquilus. That's fancy talk for a place on the moon where they'll probably build the first resort. Here's another thing he said. He goes, you should have to go to every place in the world before you go to the moon. And I'm like, what? Like, what kind of stupid, broken logic is that? I don't want to go to Somalia. I'd rather go to the moon. I would rather go to the moon than just about anyone. Who is this person I'm talking to? Would you honestly think that there are no humans that would want to go to the moon? We're all going to want to go to the moon. Crazy. What are we doing this for? I don't know, dude. You're talking to me on a cell phone. Technology that we wouldn't have had we not had a space race in the first place. What's going to come of it? Stop being so short-sighted. It's not about what we do today. It's about what comes of it in 50 years. Think about the way the world has changed just in the last 30 years alone. Think about it. If you're Gen X like me, we're one of the lucky generations who have a foot straddled in both the pre-digital era and the new digital era. We are the last people on the face of the earth. We are the last people in the history of humanity that remembers the world before internet connectivity. That's a really special thing. This group of people, us who are living now, we are truly special in the grand scheme of the history of humanity. We are the only people who can say that we experienced both worlds. We are the people whose eyes were opened at the advent of the internet age. That is freaking special. We are important in the history, and we're screwing it all up. Moving on. Moon. I'm all for moon stuff. I'm all for Mars stuff. But can we stop talking about Mars? We're not even sure that we didn't just crash into the. We forgot how to get to the moon. Let's perfect the moon. Then we'll go to the Mars. You don't. When a kid gets their driver's license, they don't get out on the expressway. They stay in their neighborhood. You drive around the block a little bit. That's what the moon is. The moon is us. With our little bumper sticker that says student driver. That's just us trying to figure it all out. Mars, stop it. Moving on. The AT&T outage that happened yesterday that affected me. Oh my God, I was so pissed off about that. That basically ruined my freaking day. The AT&T outage, AT&T is now saying that they know what the culprit is, and it was a software update. Really? It's nice that you folks got to experience it on your end, because I'm used to updating my software on my phone and then having my phone be screwy for the next 2 days. Nice to see that happens at the corporate level as well. That's what they're saying anyway. All right. And on that same tip, there was another hack that occurred yesterday. People are talking about this. Prescriptions. Apparently the nation's prescription drug network was hacked. People trying to get, the weekend's coming up. Dudes need their Viagra or whatever. Here's the issue. Let's see. What did they say about the prescription drug hack? Pharmacies nationwide report outages in wake of cyber attacks. Pharmacies all over the country are experiencing. Sorry, I was just distracted by a headline about Tesla and Cybertrucks. Pharmacies all over the country are experiencing delays in prescription orders due to a cyber attack on one of the biggest healthcare technology companies in the nation, Change Healthcare. Change Healthcare first noticed the cybersecurity issue affecting its network on Wednesday morning on the East Coast. It comes amid a major cell outage. This was the AT&T hack. Don't know if they're related or whatever. People are still experiencing issues with their prescriptions. The company added, "We will provide updates as more information becomes available." Okay, so if you have some prescriptions that are, taking a little extra time, that's why you know this. Also, playing a little cleanup here from yesterday. We talked about the story of the kid down there at Barbers Hill High School. Remember the kid? He had dreads. He's like a dread-wearing kid, and the school's like, "Well, we take our haircuts very seriously here at Barbers Hill. Your hair violates the hair conduct," or whatever. I don't know what the hell it is. So he said, no, actually, the state of Texas has something called the Crown Act, which is supposed to stop people from ethnically dictating or culturally dictating hairstyles. Like if you're a cultural, we talked yesterday, look, black people hair is different than white people hair. You can do different things with it. I told you about the girl I went to school with who made the Mickey Mouse ears. She had it for like 8 years. For like 8 years, she just had the Mickey Mouse ears. She had an afro and she had turned them into 2 little Mickey Mouse ears. It was adorable. Everybody loved it. She was very popular. Point is this. Black people hair is different. So they got a law now that says that just because like an old white man doesn't like, because black girls have crazy hair. They do crazy creative stuff with hair. So that's why this is interesting that it's a guy. And also, he was challenging this. They said, you can't have your hair cut like that. And he said, why? And they said, because it violates our hair policy here at Barbers Hill. And he said, but my hair doesn't violate your hair policy. Your hair policy says for boys, it can't go past the earlobe and can't cover your eyebrows. That's it. That's the hair. I got dreads. They're up on top of my head. Apparently he wears them like Sideshow Bob or something like that. So he took that argument into court, and yesterday he lost. I thought there was no way he's going to lose. I thought that his argument was codified by recent state legislation, this Crown Act. I don't know. Apparently not. Cut your hair, kid. Cut your hair. So that was resolved. Well, again, why do we care about people's? It's that they'll say things like, "Cause it's a distraction to other students." No, it's not. You're just a mean old person who doesn't like youth culture. That's what it is. You just don't like that these haircuts are different from what you view as the norm. So you're gonna let it bug you because you have so little joy in your life. There is no joyous thing that you can turn to in your everyday life that will create the endorphin rush quite as easily and as accessibly as you being raged. You being enraged and angry about. That's the easiest, most accessible way that we can tap into that. So we do it. Shut up about the kid's hair. Who cares? Now, you want to talk about something that's distracting. And this is a conversation I had recently with a friend of mine who's a teacher. He and his wife are both high school teachers, and they were telling me girls, the way they dress, the way young girls are now dressing in high school. And I know I sound like an old man and all of that stuff. Well, don't look, they should dress. No, it really is a thing where girls are just dressing more and more provocatively. And like strippers, like stripper fashion, like prostitute fashion is like a thing. They were telling me about how that's a real problem. It's like, but haircuts in 2024, we're getting on people about haircuts. By the way, I'm all for school uniforms. I like school uniforms. I think school uniforms are something that we should have more of, especially in areas where there's a mix, an economic mix in the school. Nothing will make like a middle-class kid feel worse than, not having the latest gym shoes when everybody else. School uniforms eliminate that. Everybody wears the same thing. Kids can all feel like they're on an equal playing field with the other kids instead of constantly being reminded that guy's got a jean jacket I really want that my mom can't afford, stuff like that. So school uniforms are good. Haircuts, nah, but that's all right. This kid's gonna have to cut his hair. Good thing he's 18 and out of high school now. Here's another story. This is a serious story. This is an ugly, very sad story, and it's making the rounds here locally. So let's talk about it. It's the subject of ectopic pregnancies. Ectopic pregnancies, for those of you who don't know, are pregnancies that form outside the womb. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but I know that it's an incredibly dangerous situation for a pregnant mother to find herself in. It's deadly. It kills mothers. The baby might be born fine, but the mom will not make it. So traditionally, when an ectopic pregnancy is diagnosed, they do a surgery and the pregnancy is terminated because the care of the mother, the life of the mother, is in danger. That's been accepted almost nationally. I think there is one exception. I think there's I was reading the thing, there's some county in Mississippi that doesn't allow for ectopic procedures. But even in states that are embroiled in the midst of this abortion debate, even those states in their new legislations that they've put out that've gotten so much attention, even in that legislation, these states have provisions for ectopic pregnancies, as does the state of Texas. State of Texas and their anti-abortion thing from just last year, there is ectopic. I can't say it. How am I saying? Ectopic pregnancies are excluded from the abortion ban in Texas. However, a 25-year-old woman who was diagnosed with an ectopic pregnancy, she went to a hospital in Arlington and they said, yeah, you got an ectopic pregnancy and you need to have that thing taken care of, but it ain't going to happen here. We ain't doing it here. We don't know what the rules are anymore. We're here in this was a woman whose life at this point was in peril. She had gone to the doctor specifically because she was experiencing some problems, and they said, yeah, here's the problems, and it's really bad for you, and you need to have this taken care of. And she said, great, let's go get it taken care of. And they said, nope, not here. Not here. We're not going to do it. The hospital decided not to do it. So she had to just go hospital shopping, right? She doesn't know how far along this is. So she ended up finding a hospital also in Arlington. But my God, man, people are so afraid of these crazy draconian legislations that nobody knows what is and what isn't legal and what some Karen is going to file a charge. I mean, here, I'll give you this. Kelsey Norris de la Cruz tried not to cry as the doctor in the emergency room delivered one of the most horrifying diagnoses a pregnant woman can receive. 25-year-old college senior was told she's likely had an ectopic pregnancy, a highly dangerous condition where the embryo implants outside the uterus. Without immediate treatment, the fallopian tube can rupture and the patient can die. The law that has prohibited abortions in Texas since Roe versus Wade was overturned now explicitly allows doctors to treat ectopic pregnancies. But when doctors at Texas Health Arlington Memorial Hospital evaluated Norris De La Cruz last week, they refused to terminate the pregnancy, saying there was some chance the pregnancy could still be viable. So we're just going to roll the dice, Mom. If you die in your sleep tonight, oops, we're sorry. But technically, maybe that baby could have been born. I mean, you'd have been dead. Maybe that's so we don't really know what the legal. I mean, I think they're pretty well indemnified with the written exception to the Texas legislation that says that ectopic pregnancy procedures are legal. But I mean, everybody's worried. Norris De La Cruz ultimately received emergency surgery 24 hours later at a different hospital in the area, at which point her ectopic pregnancy had already started to rupture. Anyway, there you go, blah, blah, blah. We don't need to go into the weeds on that. You can find out more information if it's something you're interested in, but what a terrible situation man, you've just been told that your baby is not going to be a baby. I went through something similar to that. I was pregnant with my wife for 9 months. Well, she did all the heavy lifting in the pregnancy. I had the fun part. But, for the most part, we went through a 9-month pregnancy and then the baby died. The baby died right. So that's really difficult. Because you're in the mindset, this girl, I don't know how far along she was, but she's in the mindset she's going to be a mom. She's having all these feelings, and now she's just been told the baby's dead. She's dealing with that. Now on top of that, it's like, oh yeah, and you could die too, and there ain't nothing we can do about it. Hit the bricks, sister. You're out of here, because this Texas law has got us all freaked out. Anyway, all right, big news let's get into some celebrity news, some celebrity gossip. I read everything about this story today. I thought it was fascinating. I don't really know who this person is. I mean, I know the name because they're a pop culture icon of the past 20 years. I know their name. But I have no clue. I've never seen any of their content. I think I've seen them on TV. I've only become aware of their content because of stuff that they have done that has made them, scandalous or whatever. I don't know. Wendy Williams. Do you guys know who Wendy Williams is? Like I said, she's famous. We've heard of her, right? I don't know who she is. Wendy Williams is She came from radio. She was very popular in New York City. I do know a little bit about Wendy Williams. I know about her radio career, but as far as once she became a big star on TV and nationwide, I never saw the show. I don't really know what her whole bit was, but I do know that in radio she was a shock jock. She was a rare female urban radio shock jock, and she was doing stuff because she was a woman and because she was in urban radio that was far more shocking than anything that Stern was doing. Man, here's another thing about Wendy Williams. I don't know if people remember. She was the flag bearer for homophobia in hip hop. She was like the hip hop "you're gay" police back in the 1990s. She was going around outing everybody. Like saying this person's gay, and not like it's gay and they're okay. It's gay and they shouldn't be in it. This is who Wendy Williams was. Nobody remembers that. She was she was a shock jock, man. She was a shock jock, but you probably never heard her because you weren't listening to New York urban radio at the time. But yeah, she was mean. A lot of people hated her. She did a lot of. Anyway, here's the deal with her. She goes on, she gets a TV show. She becomes this really provocative and interesting daytime television person. I've never seen her show, but then she has a series of breakdowns and weird things. And is she a drug addict? Is she not? She's also one of these people who would never let an opportunity to tell the world about her latest malady go unpassed without a TV special. She was one. Today on a very special Wendy Williams, I'm going to tell you about echolocaloma, which is something that I suffer from, and I've been dealing with it for 10 years. And then it's something like swollen ankles. It's something stupid. It's like she was always milking, whatever the hell. So anyway, She gets out of her TV show. She hasn't been on the air in a bunch of years because she had some kind of crazy breakdown and she was in an outpatient facility, and then she had a drinking problem and all this kind of stuff. And she just torched her entire career. She just did every wrong move. I think she's bipolar. I think that's the real problem. I think that she's a crazy person and that she's made life decisions that a crazy person would make, and she's probably gone untreated her whole life. Now she's treated. She's under a guardianship. She's worth like $100 million. She's in a guardianship. Her bank, Wells Fargo, demanded that they put her in a guardianship because she was apparently doing stupid things with her money. Did you know a bank could do that? Well, apparently if you're crazy enough with your money, the bank can go to court and go, hey. Anyway, there's a new documentary special on Lifetime that's being released. I think it's either started this week or it's starting soon. And it's about her, and she has herself given unprecedented access to this film crew for the past year. And now it's a documentary and it's coming out. And apparently in this documentary, we're going to see some things. We're going to see some really unvarnished kind of eye-opening things about Wendy Williams. And to that end, the producers, I think it was on the eve, the story broke yesterday. So is it starting tonight? I'm not sure. To that end, the producers of the documentary have released a press statement saying that she suffers from aphasia and dementia. That's what you're going to see. That when you see this Wendy Williams documentary, you're going to be like, what's wrong with her? Well, they're getting out in front of it, and they're saying she has been diagnosed with aphasia and she's suffering from different levels of dependency, alcohol and drugs, and senility. That she's got some like she's just not there. So knowing everything that I know about her, did she just film this really outrageous sort of behind the scenes look at what her life is really like, where she's putting on an act? Because she's always been an alarmist. She's always been like, I'm dying, So and aphasia, we never heard of aphasia until a year ago when Bruce Willis came out and said he has it. Now she's got it too. I don't know. I'm going to check it out though. I'm going to watch some of this crazy Wendy Williams documentary. She's mean. She's been bad. She is not, when I talk about bad radio people, when I talk about, you guys don't understand. Most of the people in radio are really awful individuals. She's one of them. She's like a female Russ Martin. Seriously. Except worse, because she was far more successful and had far more influence. She ruined people's lives, Wendy Williams. And now she's got a Lifetime special. We'll watch. I'll check it out. I don't know that I'm going to watch. Let's see here. What else do we have? Checking in the chat room. Byron says Wendy Williams is a lizard person, and this is a cover. Yeah, maybe. Byron says I have Briglizian syndrome. My knee clicks when I bend. Is that a real thing? You should do a special. You should do a daytime special where you talk about your life struggling to overcome Briglizian click syndrome or whatever. Let's talk about Vice and BuzzFeed. Vice and BuzzFeed are trending. Vice and BuzzFeed, you're familiar with them. They were the two new media darlings of about 15 years ago. Everybody was looking to throw money at both Vice and BuzzFeed. And now here we sit in 2024, and they are both nothing. You know what happened to Vice and BuzzFeed? This is an interesting story. This is what always happens. The man got involved. And everything went away. So Vice and BuzzFeed were really important. They were really big in the space of digital media, and they were first through the gates, and they were doing something different. And then a whole bunch of money came their way, and everybody started throwing money at them, and they grew. They got these evaluations that were absurd. Why? Because rich people were like, this is going to be the wave of the future. We're all going to make $20 billion. Sure, I'll invest $100 million. So things that you never heard of, like 2005, BuzzFeed has been evaluated at $4.5 billion. That's absurd, right? It's absurd. It's like Twitter. It's like Elon Musk buying Twitter for $46 billion. That's rich people just gambling that this really is going to be the next big thing. So what happened with BuzzFeed and Vice and things? Here's what happened. They stayed relatively independent. Now, they both took major investments from funds and all that kind of stuff, but they still had some form of autonomy over what they were creating. They were never sucked up into a Warner Brothers or a Paramount or an AT&T, one of the big giants. The big giants, they put money in these, companies, but little amounts. And then what happened for some people, this is where we hear about, some guy started an app and he made $400 million, and then you never hear of the app again because, Yahoo or whatever, Yahoo, I don't even know, Amazon came in and paid the guy $400 million for the app. Why? Because they just wanted to be able to own that app if in fact they decided they were going to do something with it. In many of these cases, they didn't do anything with it. They would just pay a guy $400 million and then not do anything with what they paid. And they went away. Now, over the course of the last 15 years, these originals, the BuzzFeeds and the Vices, like I said, they've stayed regularly autonomous. But the big ones, the Malevolent Seven, as I like to call them, they started gobbling up everything and everything started to become consolidated. So now here we sit in 2024 where you have BuzzFeed and you have Vice, but you also have wholly owned Alphabet things that are competing with it. You have wholly owned, what I'm saying is the big guys came in and the big guys ultimately win everything. And it was a war of attrition. It took 15 years, but now these independent operators like the BuzzFeeds and all that, they should have sold 10 years ago. They should have sold, but now you're like, nah, we're just going to stay here. We're not going to become a part of the Warner Brothers monolith of entertainment content group. No, they didn't. They stayed on their own and now they're all going down the tubes. They can't compete. They can't compete. They firing everybody. BuzzFeed, Vice. Let's talk about Vice. Vice has announced another round of big layoffs. They're firing everybody. Vice used to be cool. Vice was really cool. But then, a million other things were also cool that followed. And those other things, had bigger backing. They had Amazon or YouTube or, Dateline New York City. Vice Media plans to lay off several hundred more employees and no longer publish material on its Vice.com website. Vice.com, gone away. Vice, which filed for bankruptcy last year before being sold for $350 million to a consortium led by the Fortress Investment Group, is also looking to sell its Refinery 29 publishing business. It's the latest sign of financial problems buffeting the media industry. Digital sites, The Messenger, BuzzFeed, and Jezebel have all shut down in the past year, and legacy media outlets like the Los Angeles Times, Washington Post, and Wall Street Journal have also seen cuts. Once a swashbuckling media company geared to a younger audience with an immersible storytelling style that encompassed digital, television, and film outlets, New York-based Vice was valued at $5.7 billion in 2017. 7 years ago, it was valued at $5.7 billion. And now it's like worth nothing. Jesus. All right. I liked Vice. I liked BuzzFeed, but I haven't been to either of those sites and I haven't used either of those sites in 5 years. How about Andy Cohen, everybody's favorite dude from Bravo, Andy Cohen. I say everyone's favorite because I don't know. Andy, does anybody got a problem with it? I mean, he's kind of like, he's a bit much. Like Andy Cohen to me always seems to be turned up to 11 when he doesn't need to be turned up to 11. He's a bit much. Anyway, Andy Cohen is found himself in a bit of a scandal here. He's being accused of sexual harassment by Brandi Glanville, Playboy playmate. I don't know what Brandi Glanville did besides get naked. But whatever. She's famous. I know her name. Brandi Glanville is going after Andy Cohen. Andy Cohen, by the way, Andy Cohen, he played it well. Andy Cohen was like an executive. He was an executive at the Bravo networks. He was like a producer and he had a corner office and he was in charge. He was like a program director. And then he created the Housewives things and they became majorly successful. And so his stock at the company rose. And then he just put himself on camera. And now he's the face of Bravo. But really, he just started out as like a programming guy, a guy in the programming department. Interesting. Brandi Glanville has accused Andy Cohen of sexual harassment, inviting her to watch him have sex with another Bravo star. Now, I don't know if you know this or not. I don't know if it's obvious. I don't know if you're able to discern such things from seeing somebody, or if you know the history of Andy Cohen, but Andy Cohen is a gay man. Andy Cohen is outwardly gay. He's gay. So that's why this is interesting, that a gay man is being accused of sexual harassment by a woman. All right, let's see how this plays out, huh? Brandi Glanville is accusing Bravo head honcho Andy Cohen of sexually harassing her. This, according to a scathing letter her attorney sent NBC, Shed Media, and Warner Brothers. The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills alum, 51, claims the Watch What Happens Live host, 55, sent her a video in 2022 in which he appeared obviously inebriated. Cohen allegedly boasted in the clip that he wanted to sleep with another Bravo star while thinking of Glanville. Per the letter, and invited. He then also invited the former housewife to watch him engage in sexual acts via FaceTime. Again, he's a gay man. He's a gay man. She knows he's a gay man. The identity of the reality star, that the father of two, he's got two kids. But he's gay. He's gay. The identity of the reality star and the father of two allegedly wanted to hook up with was not disclosed. So we don't know. So maybe it's like one of the husbands of one of the Real Housewives. I don't know. Mr. Cohen was Mrs. Glanville's boss at the time and exercised complete and total control over her career, the letter further states. Well, that's probably true. I mean, I can get that. Like, let's just forget about the fact that he's gay and he's probably not really, lusting after Brandi Glanville because, again, he's gay. Forgetting that, he is her boss, and he may view the relationship between him and Brandi Glanville much differently than she does. She views it as he's the boss. He's how I get paid. I need to keep him happy. Whereas maybe he's just like, yeah, we're all one big happy family. And whatever I do, they're all cool with. And she's wonderful. And we're just having some fun and screwing around. And that's the difference in perspective and what the relationship is. I can see how Brandi Glanville would be like, he's my boss. And he's sending me sexy stuff. Of course, he's gay, which kind of changes. But whatever. The reality of the fear that was stricken into her should have been assuaged by the knowledge that Andy Cohen is gay and probably not really into it. The video shows Kate Chastain and I very clearly joking with Brandi, he tweeted. All right, so he's talking. Andy Cohen is now responding to the video. It was absolutely meant in jest, and Brandi's response clearly communicated that she was in on the joke. That said, what I did was totally inappropriate, and I apologize, Cohen said. See, now this is also something where it's about perspective. This is from Andy. There are true. Look, you can be completely wrong, but your perspective tells you that you believe it to be true. From Andy Cohen's perspective in this little give and take, this little sexy, dirty talk give and take with Brandi Glanville, in Andy Cohen's perspective, it was a joke and she laughed and she was cool with it. Now let's flip that. To her perspective, he's her boss. And all of a sudden, he's making these sexy jokes, and she's a hot woman who has spent her entire life. She knows, when somebody's hitting on her or whatever. So that put her in a different position, a position that possibly, because of his perspective, Andy Cohen couldn't even comprehend, didn't even understand how what he did was wrong. It was wrong, but, it's about perspective. I can hurt you by doing something and have absolutely no intent in hurting you. But I just did it because from my perspective, I didn't think it was going to be a problem. Your perspective is different. Both things can be true. All right, so we move on with this, right? Andy Cohen, Brandi Glanville, whatever. We'll see how this turns out. He's apparently, Brandi Glanville's still pretty hot. Let's see here. What else do we have? Speaking of hot bitches, actually, I don't even know if this is a female. Biden's dog is making the news. Biden's dog. There's a story going around here. Major. He's like the first dog. He's a big German Shepherd. Biden likes him. But he's like, he's my dog, Major. I don't know why I gave Biden a Southern accent, but I did. Biden's dog Major is famous for biting Secret Service people. They've got a total now 24 times Major has bitten Secret Service agents. 24 times. You ever been bitten by a dog? That hurts. That's a wild. Being bitten by anything. I'm not talking like a bug or an insect or a bee or something. Being bitten by something with jaw, like being bitten. Holy cow, man! Is that a sensation? I've been bitten by a dog right on the arm. You let go, but man, for a split second, it was like, oh, he's gonna take my arm off. Like you just feel a total lack of control. It's scary. This dog has bit 24 Secret Service agents. Oh God, what do? You can't do that. You dog. Look, I love dogs. You know I love dogs. I'm heavily into dogs. Love dogs, but I can tell you that I have a similar issue to what Biden is probably going through, and that is my dog bites people. Dog's a biter. God, is that the worst kind of situation you can be in? And I'll tell you why it's the worst situation you can be in. Because the entire outside world looks at your dog like it's an asshole. That dog's an asshole. And they're right. They're right. I would look at a dog like that and be like, that dog's an asshole. I hate that dog. Why is that dog so mean? But then we're talking about my dog. We're talking about our dog. We're talking about the compound dog. We're talking about CeeLo. To me, she is the most loving, affectionate, loyal, cuddle. I've never had a dog that cuddles the way this one does. I woke up last night in the middle of the night. Again, she's just laying on me. She lays across my body. She's like 75 pounds. She just lays across my body. Breathing heavy all night long. And I understand that this is a part of her breed. Her breed is to watch over a flock and to make sure that her flock doesn't stray. So when this particular breed of dog is near you, it tries to touch you. Because here's the thing. Here's how it was explained to me. My dog falls asleep with her paw on me, somewhere on me. Like she'll fall asleep with her paw on my foot or my paw on my leg or something. And she does that because it's the way that they can be comfortable, that if they fall asleep, they can relax, they can fall asleep. And if you move, they'll wake up. They'll know. That's why she does that. And because of that, they come across as extraordinarily cuddly dogs. However, she hates everybody and everything. And just like Major Biden, Joe Biden's dog, I don't know how in the long term this is going to work out. This is not Joe Biden and his dog. Well, for Joe Biden, it's going to work out fine because he's going to be a retired president and he's going to have plenty of room. You know, he can have people that can handle the dog. Hopefully, apparently, but you know what I mean? He's going to be fine. I don't. I worry about CeeLo because I can't have people over. A friend cannot come over to the house she's attacked James Parker twice. And the first time it was like, she's just kidding. And then the second time it's like, holy shit, we got a problem here. I'll show you what we're talking about. She attacked Art. Art's a nice guy. No reason for her to be attacking old Art. Look at her. This is her. I don't know if you've seen her. This is her just sitting in her yard. She's just looking for something to kill. She's just, She's an incredible dog. She's an incredible dog. I can't tell you how much how attached I am to her. My son, who is, one of only 4 people that this dog seems to be okay with. This dog's okay with E, seems to be okay with E's son. He's okay with me and he's okay with my son, which is good. And this dog will go to war for any of us. That's the other thing that it's like, man, what is the future with this dog? This dog is willing to die for us. That is not a question. This dog is going to jump in front of the first bullet. So I don't know. But I was reading this Biden story about his dog, and I'm like, man, that just sucks when your dog bites people. Have you guys ever had dogs that bit people? It's the worst. Your dog is the asshole in the neighborhood, and you love it because you have a different relationship with it than everybody else. Barney says, my dogs love everyone and everything except chickens. It's a real problem where I live. Your dogs sound awesome, Barney. Your dogs, that's what I want. I just want, but here's the other thing too about this dog. If I take CeeLo, my dog, if I take her out First of all, she's a terrible walker. She goes where she wants to go. She's really strong. She doesn't walk well. And the choker collar doesn't even bother her, not even slightly. I have to pick her up and physically carry her blocks when we want to change directions because she still wants to walk in this way. It's terrible on walks. But if I bring her over to somebody's home, like I can bring her into somebody else's home and she's totally cool. She's like, okay, this is not my place. I'm a guest. She knows how to be a guest, is I guess what I'm saying. It's just here. It's just when she sees you. Oh my God. That's enough. I can talk dogs forever. I can talk dogs, space, gangsters, and radio. I can talk those subjects I can talk forever. All right, let's move on. Biden's dog bit 24 people. Good Lord. All right, what else do we have here? You know, guys, that's it. That's pretty much it as far as the stories that I have prepared for you on today's show. I know, a little bit shorter than normal. I'm sorry. We've only gone an hour and 15 minutes. That's my bad. I apologize. But I do have something here we can go through. This is fun. I haven't looked at this yet, but I saw the headline and I thought, we can kill time with this. This will be good. This is nice little fodder. This is good content, especially since I consider myself to be the Gen expert. Some Gen X content coming at you. Barney has more information on his fascinating dogs. He says they're awesome until they bring a dead chicken home and your pissed off drunk neighbors this dog does that too. This dog kills animals and then, it's his little, he doesn't present them. Like CeeLo doesn't like kill a squirrel and then present it. CeeLo's more like a serial killer. CeeLo kills things and then carries them and deposits them in the same corner of the yard. It's like a graveyard of just like dead birds and animals. And it's weird. It's like dogs are supposed to like do what Barney just said. The dogs are supposed to kill something and then bring it to you. Like, look what I did. Because they think that's great. They think they should get praise. Not my dog. My dog is just out there indiscriminately killing things. And then he's got a body count. He's like keeping track. I call him a he because all dogs are boys and all cats are girls. But in fact, my dog is a female. Which also is another thing. My last two dogs have been females. I don't know why I go with the most high degree of difficulty with dogs, but that's what females are. Female dogs they're called bitches for a reason. Female dogs are way more difficult, way more temperamental, than boy dogs. Big dumb boy dogs are like fine. But big dumb girl dogs, they're weird. They're just, ugh. All right, so let's do this. The headline here that got my attention. What is the headline? Let me just read you the headline. Again, I haven't jumped into this yet, so I don't know what it is. It could be terrible, or it could just be us. Could just be us having some fun, riffing on some stuff. It says here, Gen Xers, that's me. Gen Xers are sharing the things people get wrong about the 1990s. Oh, okay. All right. I lived in the 90s. I remember the 90s. I was a fully grown adult in the 1990s. I remember the 90s well. So this is this little story here about what people get wrong about the 90s. All right, let's see. What is this? Is this is it an actual story? Or do I got to flip through some of this shit? Okay, so it says here, so this is compiled. This is a person wrote this story about things that people, when they talk about the 1990s, they just get wrong. Things people think about the 1990s that for any of us who were there just is not true at all. Some of these come from Reddit. So here I've pulled some of the better Reddit ones. All right, so here's the first one. This is the first good one. Things that are just not true about the 90s that people think is true. Not all Gen Xers were disinterested slackers in the 1990s. That's true. That's very true. Like the idea of the entire generation now, here we are 30 years later, the idea of us when we were 18 was that we were slackers. Back, I'm a loser, baby. That whole thing that we embraced, that we had given up. And there is some truth to it because Gen Xers did fully understand as we were entering the workplace in the 1990s, we fully understood that the millennials were the boomers were a log jam in front of us. stopping our advancement. And then we had the encroaching power of the millennials coming up right behind us. So there was some, cynicism and maybe some idea of, but not everybody. It's not like we didn't have Elon Musk is Gen X. That dude wasn't a slacker. Number two thing that people get wrong about the 1990s. The 90s was a lot more analog than it's presented in TV and films. People in the 90s still read newspapers. They still had magazine subscriptions. Cell phones were nowhere, and everything was on cassette tapes and VHS tapes. That's true. That is true. Okay, but I don't know if they get that wrong. I don't know if I've ever seen a depiction of the 90s where somebody's, on a smartphone. Number three things people get wrong about the 90s. No, this is stupid. It's about wallpaper. It's about interior design. I'm not interested in that. Number four thing that people get wrong about the 90s. This they totally get wrong, and I hate this. I hate this revisionist history among people who should know better. But the idea that we weren't all broke in the 90s, the idea that the 90s were flush with money and everybody had money and everything was great, that is absolute bullshit. Money was tight in the 90s, just like it is now. People were happy with fewer luxuries, however. Yeah, you know why we were happier with fewer luxuries in the 90s? Because these luxuries hadn't been invented yet. We didn't know. It goes on to say, in the 1990s, it was still an absolutely idiotic idea to go spend $500 on a piece of technology and then give it to your 8-year-old. Right? That's what we do now. 8-year-old, time for their first cell phone. Let's go get them a $500 piece of tech. That was that. Now, that was something that wasn't done in the 1990s. Nobody would give a kid something that expensive in the 90s. You know how expensive my kid's cell phone is? My kid's got a cell phone that is better than any cell phone I've ever had. He drops it. It's all cracked. Actually, that's not true. He actually takes care of this phone pretty good. I shouldn't. Let's see here. What else they say? People fail to understand that the 90s were really two completely different decades. The early 90s and the late 90s are absolutely nothing alike. That's very true. The early 90s and the late 90s were two very different times culturally. I can't stand it when I see a picture of the Spice Girls with a caption that reads, "Oh, this is so 90s." Yeah, really. The Spice Girls were at the end of the 90s. I wouldn't say that the Spice Girls were quintessentially 90s. The Spice Girls were quintessentially 98 to 2001. That's what the Spice Girls were. But I wouldn't say that they're 90s. Let's see here. Another thing that people get wrong about the 1990s is that Nirvana ruled the decade and killed off all other forms of hard rock. It says here, the truth is they hit hard for about 2.5 years, and then we were all stuck with Tonic and the Spin Doctors. Yeah, people, that is kind of interesting now because we have these bands that have been around for decades and decades and decades. And I think that people, especially, younger people, they fail to realize that Nirvana was really only a thing for 2 albums. That was just like two albums. Pearl Jam has been, around now for 30 years. Nirvana, not so much. Let's see. Something else that people get wrong when they think about the 90s. Let's see. Grunge always seems to get the spotlight when people talk about the 90s, but an overwhelming number of people were also very preppy. The 90s brought to the forefront household names such as Gap, Banana Republic, and J. Crew. That's very true. That is very true. Everything. I didn't dress grunge. I was not a grunge dresser guy. We saw that on MTV and, dudes in bands dressed that way and stuff. But if you were like 23 years old in the early to mid 90s, you probably dressed preppy. If that's how you dressed to begin with, but it wasn't like we all just suddenly went and got torn jeans and flannel shirts and grew our hair long. It was like, this is the 90s, man. No, it was just a look that was popular for a period of time. Number 8 says, people forget that the rave scene was bigger and better than anyone or than anything today back in the 90s. Well, I kind of agree with that. Although I haven't been to a rave in recent years, but the old school warehouse raves, the old school, you just throw a pop-up party like 1994, 1995. You just get a bunch of DJs or whatever. I mean, that was a scene. That was a really cool scene. Everybody doing drugs, like the younger kids all doing drugs. My first rave that I went to, I went as well with the woman that I would marry. And we were just there by happenstance. We just walked in and we saw all these people like 5 years younger than us. And we're like, man, this is what the kids are doing. We would end up attending many raves. It turns out we enjoyed raves. Raves were kind of fun. Mom jeans. People think that the 90s were a period where people willingly wore mom jeans. That is not true. Mom jeans were always lame. They were lame in the 90s, and in the 90s is when moms wore them. Let's see here. That's a stupid one. Okay, here's one. The Riot Girl movement does not get the historical attention and recognition that it deserves. Let's see. It's an extremely significant 90s cultural event. Riot Girls, that's true. The Riot Girl scene was really interesting to me. The Riot Girl scene, people incorrectly think that it's a Seattle thing, but it's not really. The Riot Girl scene, as far as I know it, was something that spread from Cleveland, Chicago, Minneapolis into the Pacific Northwest. It was a collection of female alternative-leaning rock artists, either in complete bands of their own or just as, well, like in Chicago, we had Liz Phair, who is not considered a Riot Girl per se, because Liz Phair is considered to be something completely, something maybe more substantial than the genre itself. So she is sort of outside of that. But when people talk about the Riot Girls, they think about bands like L7, who were great. Some, like on a bigger scale, you might say Hole, but Hole wasn't really a Riot Girl band. There were dudes in that band. It wasn't really the same thing. Veruca Salt is one of my favorites. Again, that's a band that people like, don't really consider to be in the L7 Pacific Northwest Riot Girl thing, but they are very important to the Riot Girl scene. Who else? What other great, cool-ass Riot Girl bands are there? Oh, man. What was Tanya Donnelly's band? What was she in? I don't know. She did something. And then the Deal Sisters. Didn't the Deal Sisters have a band? Anyway, okay, you're right. I think there should be more attention paid to the music of that era that was being done by chicks who were rocking. Veruca Salt could rock, man. I've seen that band probably as much as I've seen any band in the history. That band could rock. Let's see. Another thing that people get wrong about the 90s, that the 90s were some kind of utopia. There was a lot of good things, but the 90s were violent, and there were way more isms on display. I don't know what that means. Homophobia. Here it goes. Homophobia was huge in the 90s. Yeah, it was. The 90s were the last decade where you could still, the 90s are the decade when Ellen DeGeneres was forced off of network television because she was gay. Simply being a homosexual was something that ABC Network said, nope, you can't be on it. This was in the 90s. Now, the interesting thing here, and boy, is this a difference between the 90s and the 2000s, she was forced off the air on ABC from her sitcom for coming out as gay. And everybody was fine with it. Yeah, that's just gonna happen. Imagine that now. That was the 90s. And then in the 2000s, she became the biggest bankable daytime television person in history, being completely gay. So things do change. Times do change. People evolve. Let's see here. Everything was extreme in the 90s. Extreme was used more. Okay, so we get that. The perception that the internet was available in the 1990s. That's another thing that I think is funny, because I got the internet late. I was late to the internet party. Not really late. So probably somewhere in the middle. I wasn't an early adopter, but by the time I finally got internet, I got internet because a whole bunch of the people in my life were like, dude, I can't believe you don't have internet yet. Turns out a lot of people didn't have internet yet, but so I was sort of late to mid to the internet party. And that was 1998. You guys, there was no internet, there were no cell phones. There was nothing. There was the I get upset like when you see something. I've seen this too being depicted in movies where it's like you'll see a kid's bedroom. This is America. There's a kid's bedroom in America in 1992. And he's got a home computer. No, he didn't. He didn't have a home computer in his bedroom in 1992, unless he was a truly exceptional individual, unless he was really interested in computers. That was something weird. That was something that, you had to be specifically interested in your own thing to have a computer back then. People didn't have computers in their home, as a norm until like 99, 2000, right? Right around that time. That's when everybody started AOL. Remember America Online? That was huge. Guns and gangster rap. People, when they talk about the 90s music culture, they always want to talk about the rise of grunge and gangster rap, but nobody remembers how hot country was. Yeah, country was huge in the 90s. Is there a bigger 90s star than Garth Brooks? Is there? Show it to me. Show me. Pearl Jam. Pearl Jam ain't sold 1/10 the records Garth Brooks has sold. I don't know if that be true. I just assume it's true. Garth Brooks was huge. Dixie Chicks were huge. I don't know who else was huge in the 90s. Like Reba? I don't know. I wasn't into country, but I recognize it was huge. Let's see. And finally, here's another one on the subject of Kurt Cobain and Nirvana. Things that aren't true about the 90s that everybody thinks is true. People think it's true that everyone in the 90s loved Kurt Cobain and that he was the spokesman for an entire generation. Yeah, that wasn't true. I know a lot of people that hated Kurt Cobain. When he was still alive, it was like a thing. You were either a Nirvana fan or a Pearl Jam fan. And the Pearl Jam fans hated Nirvana and the Nirvana fans hated Pearl Jam, but Kurt Cobain was seen as kind of a prick. He was kind of like a troublemaker. He was, I don't even know that at the time. This is interesting. I don't know that at the time, like let's say around the time of In Utero, which was the last Nirvana album. Around the time of In Utero, Heart-Shaped Box, I think was the hit off that. So around the time of In Utero, I don't know that anybody was considering Kurt Cobain a genius. I don't know that anybody was. They were a big, hot band. They were the band of the moment. But, it wasn't, like, it only, I think Kurt Cobain, look, I love Nirvana. I think Nirvana is a great band. And I think those albums are amazing. But I don't think they're the greatest of all time, I mean, you can't do a greatest rock album of all time list without seeing Nirvana Smells Like Teen, or not Smells Like, Nirvana Nevermind at number 2. It's always either number 2, always, because Sgt. Pepper's is always number 1, but it's always like number 2 or number 3, Nirvana. And I don't know that at the time that I'd have been like, yeah, in 50 years, everybody's going to say this is the second greatest rock album of all time. It was a great album, but man, there's a lot of good albums, Hell, there was a period of time when I thought the Counting Crows was at their debut. I think it was their debut, August and everything after. There was a period of time where I thought that was the perfect album, where I thought this album is so good. Things change. But I don't think we thought of Kurt Cobain and Nirvana in that moment as being as culturally important as they've proven to be. Let's see here. People don't understand smoking. People from today, when they think about the 90s, they don't realize that every single person at every moment, all the time, had a lit cigarette. That is true, man. Kids, I'm always, you never see kids hanging out in front of the 7-Eleven smoking cigarettes anymore. They don't do it. They don't smoke cigarettes. That's such a weird old-timey thing. Like, isn't it weird when you see someone smoking a cigarette? I don't know, maybe you still smoke cigarettes, but it's so rare to see someone smoking a cigarette. And let me up this for you a little bit. It's weird in and of itself to see somebody smoking a cigarette. It is downright newsworthy to see a young person smoking a cigarette. That's got to come back, right? It's got to come back just because of how kids are and all of that. That's a cool thing. That's a way to be different. Oh my God, look at how interesting he is. He's smoking old-timey cigarettes. right? I see it coming back. I see it becoming a thing. I see some pop star in the next couple of years starting to just openly smoke old-timey cigarettes on TV to be interesting. And then all of a sudden, everybody's going to start smoking it. Just as long as it's like, don't remember our generation, the 90s, speaking of Gen X. Remember when girls all started smoking those clove cigarettes? Get the fuck out of here with that. That was the grossest smelling shit in history. Clove cigarettes. Just smoke Camels or something. I just always thought smoking cigarettes was gross. Because if you don't smoke cigarettes, if you're around someone who does smoke cigarettes, everything smells like the cigarette they just smoked. It's just. All right, that's it. We got nothing else. Those are all. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Things people get wrong about the 90s that only we Gen Xers know the truth of. That's it. That's it, guys. We're out of show. I know, a little bit shorter than normal. I hope you guys have a great weekend. Once again, I'd like to encourage you to support the show in any way, shape, or form you can. And by that, I mean money. I know I say any way, shape, or form, but I mean money. Drop a little something in the tip jar if you can. Treat me like I'm your bartender or whatever it is. We haven't had a tip in a couple of days, so we sure would appreciate it. What's happening this weekend? Is there anything good happening this weekend? Shane Gillis is hosting Saturday Night Live tomorrow night. Can't wait for that. He is so funny. He is so funny. He is just a big, he's a dog. He's a big, dumb, lovable dog who, sometimes chews up your favorite shoe and you get mad at him, but then you look at him and you're like, oh, he didn't mean it. He's not really mean. He's going to be funny. He's an interesting story because he was, 5 years ago, he was cast by Lorne Michaels to be in the cast of Saturday Night Live. He was supposed to be one of the new guys 5 years ago. And then he did a podcast that they found from years earlier where he made some Asian slurs. He was like making fun of Chinese people or something, whatever, the way people did for, I don't know, until a day came where you couldn't no longer, whatever. I don't know. It wasn't malicious. It wasn't awful. But what it ended up doing was cancel culture got him. So here's this kid. He's like a Pennsylvania stand-up comedian and sketch comedy creator. And he gets this big break on YouTube. And then because he said something about Chinese people once as a total joke, he's a stupid comedian because he said something as a total joke. He has his career completely upended. So they took Saturday Night Live away from him. Ha! That'll show you. You make a Ching Chong Chinaman reference on a podcast, you'll never work again. So that was the attempt. Well, what happened? Instead, people went, that's some bullshit, man. This poor guy got railroaded. He became massive. And now here we are 5 years later and he's hosting. Like Lorne Michaels had to pick up the phone and call Shane Gillis and go, hey, remember how we embarrassed you and tried to totally kill your career? How about you come back and host Saturday Night Live? So knowing Shane Gillis the way that I do, and I don't know him personally, but I am a big fan of his stand-up comedy, and I've seen a lot of interviews with him, and I know the kind of dude that he is. He is not going to get up and flame the place. He's not. Yeah, that's not his style. He's not a troublemaker. He's not a dick. He is going to make some references to it, but it will all be self-aimed. Like he'll be very self-effacing about it. He's not going to be accusatory, and he certainly isn't going to be rageful, because that's the thing that I love about his comedy. There isn't a lick of rage or anger in his comedy. There's stupidity. There's like frat boy stupidity and stuff like that, but he's a very talented guy. And why I'm looking forward to him hosting Saturday Night Live is because although in the past 5 years, he has made his name as a stand-up comedian with a couple of very well-received stand-up specials. His Netflix special is one of the biggest in Netflix history. And his YouTube special, the most recent one, Live from Austin, I think set some YouTube record for the first 24 hours of, people watching a comedy special. So he's a big deal in the world of comedy, stand-up comedy. But he's a sketch guy. He is the rare individual who is equally adept at doing sketch comedy and creating characters and playing acting roles comedically. He's as good at that as he is at stand-up comedy. So that's why I'm very interested in how he's going to perform. I don't know if we realize that or if many of us make that distinction, but there are two very distinct forms of comedic performances. Stand-up comedy is Richard Pryor and George Carlin. And then sketch comedy is Chris Farley and Adam Sandler and, people like that. Bill Murray. So he's like both of that. So that's going to be interesting. That's Saturday night. Bye, Adam. Adam says, love you, Pugs. I love you too, my brother. You have yourself a great-ass weekend. Al says you're awesome. Barney says vapes are going to be for nerds in 10 years. They're for nerds now. Let's be honest. But yeah, I know what you mean. Al Gamboa says Nirvana was no Foo Fighters. Isn't that an interesting conversation to have? The Foo Fighters undisputably are bigger than Nirvana. The Foo Fighters has cranked out more content. They've had more hit records. They've played to bigger crowds and more people. Foo Fighters are huge. The Foo Fighters are now entering into that Aerosmith Rolling Stone category where how old are they going to let this thing ride? Like, is it going to, we going to see the Foo Fighters when Dave Grohl is 70? I hope so. That'd be cool. But yeah, the Foo Fighters, that's an interesting. The Foo Fighters better than Nirvana. Whoo! Not more impactful, but more successful. There you go. That's how I would say it. Nirvana was more impactful. Foo Fighters, way more successful. Look at that, Dave Grohl. When I say way more successful, I don't mean that as a slight against Nirvana, because the Nirvana catalog has now gone into the classics category. And they are icons now for all the reasons that we've just been talking about. So, to have a piece of the of Nirvana publishing means that you're worth $100 million. You know what I mean? You are a wealthy individual just to be in that money, that constant cash register every year that album sells. So Dave Grohl's got that. But then also Dave Grohl's got to have the lion's share of Foo Fighters money, right? How rich is Dave Grohl? I don't know. It's like McCartney kind of, like Paul McCartney's got Beatles money, but then Paul McCartney also has like 30 years of solo success. He's got Wings money. He's got Ebony and Ivory. Wait, was that Paul McCartney? It was. Wait, who's the black guy in Ebony and Ivory? Was that Stevie Wonder? Paul McCartney did too, right? He did Ebony and Ivory with Stevie Wonder, and then he did he did Say with Michael Jackson. Yeah, I get those confused. They're both terrible songs. Anyway, that's going to do it for today's show. I got nothing else. Got to clean the house. Pick up the kid, and spend all weekend watching Drive to Survive on Netflix with a 1 hour and 90-minute interruption for the Shane Gillis Saturday Night Live tomorrow night. That's going to do it. All right, I love you guys. You have a great weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday. You're the best. Bye.